What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Alright, so I want to cover Avengers Twilight. Avengers Twilight is a brand new series that is currently being written by Chip Zdarsky. We're only covering the first two chapters of this series, but when it comes to Chip, you can tell that when he was writing this book or this series, he had one big question on his mind, and that question was, what would happen to the world if the media was left in charge? What would happen to the public, technically, if they only believe what they see when it comes to the media and not try themselves to search for the actual truth? Those questions right there were kind of being brought up, we can tell, when Chip was writing this book. And the reason why, because we're going to jump into a far future where our heroes, the original Avengers, are no longer around. And so what is the world like with the Avengers no longer around, but the media being left in charge? And so we pick up with Steve Rogers. Now, this is Steve Rogers, who is a retired superhero by this point in the timeline. Because when it came to the Avengers, they were forced to step down. They were no longer able to be heroes for one particular reason, and we're going to learn about that reason down the road. But when it comes to Steve Rogers at this point, he's retired. He no longer has the super soldier serum, but he is married. He's married to Rosa, a very lovely woman. Now, when it comes to Steve, he realized what today is. It is August 13th. Now, that is very important when it comes to this timeline. It's the day where everything fell apart for the Avengers. And matter of fact, it's better known as H-Day. Now, we're not told what H-Day is until later on in this first chapter. But that day was the reason why the Avengers had to step down. Now, you do have Steve Rogers go meet up with Luke Cage and also Matt Murdock. But just like Steve Rogers, these are other two characters who used to be classic heroes, but of course, time moved on without them. They're now all retired. They're old. Well, not Matt Murdock. He has not retired. He's still a lawyer, because we learned that in the new America, you are not allowed to record anything at all. And if you do, well, you're going to jail. It's a big major law when it comes to America around this point in time. And so Matt Murdock is trying to fight for those people who have broken that law freedom, because it's the whole idea of freedom of speech. You are able to record what you see and talk about it. But apparently in this new future, you can't do that. And so we kind of learn from Luke Cage, Matt, and also Steve, when it comes to this future, it's not just the freedom of speech, but the freedom to think is technically lost. That now the people rely on the media for their news, and what the media shows them is what they are left to believe, and not knowing what's really happening in America and the rest of the world. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when you have Steve Rogers go back home after meeting with Luke and also Matt, when he goes home to make some dinner for him and Rosa, well, the news are reporting of a brand new series that is trying to prove that maybe the Red Skull is not a bad guy. That maybe the Red Skull was actually trying to be a good person. That he was trying to stop Hitler for the betterment of the world. Now, we already know that is not true. Steve knows it's not true. Rosa, his wife, knows it's not true. But it's the media trying to paint a new picture of the Red Skull in a better light. And that right there ticks off Steve so much. And he says he has to do something about this, because now you're telling the world that Red Skull and possibly other bad guys after him were never bad. They were actually good. Now, we do get a quick look of the Avengers around this time, the new future Avengers, and we see them kind of handling different kind of problems in America, But we are quickly shift over to James Stark, the son of Iron Man and also the Wasp. Now, when it comes to James, we already know that he has taken over his father's company. Really, he's kind of left in charge to invent different things for the company. The real person in charge is also Kyle, the brother to Jarvis, the old butler to Tony Stark. Now, when it comes to our two characters, they begin to give us an idea of what's happening around the world, that you have different countries going to war left and right, and some of these countries heavily rely on America, but Iron Man suits are being used to help win wars in other countries around the world. And that is a really huge change when it comes to Tony to James. Now, James does not want to wear the Iron Man suit because of what happened on H-Day. And so because of that, he says, no, I will continue to make different kinds of Iron Man suits to help out the military to win different wars. But I will never put one on. I will not be like my father. Now, when it comes to Kyle, he does tell James, hey man, listen, even though we got a lot of things going on, we have one more thing to focus on, and that would be Steve Rogers. And the reason why Steve is such a problem is because he's doing an interview to talk about how he feels about the media trying to paint a brand new picture of the Red Skull, trying to paint a new narrative that the Red Skull was never truly evil. And so while you have Steve trying to say that all the information the media has gathered about the Red Skull is false, well, then James appears. And when James appears, we can tell that James and Steve, they don't have a good relationship with one another. Matter of fact, when it comes to James, he says, how dare you hate the media for trying to fix something that you have done? And it's him saying, look at you. You told the world the Red Skull was bad. But how do we know if he was actually bad? How do we know if the Red Skull was really good? Now, the reason why James feels like this, because of H-Day. H-Day is very important for the storyline because what happened was you had a group of villains who had all their powers enhanced. They went over to Boston and began to go on a rampage. But the Hulk got involved as well. His mind was taken over by Ultron or someone else. Either way, when it came to the Hulk, he went crazy alongside with the villains, and Boston was completely destroyed. But most of the deaths were basically the Hulk's fault. And so it's James saying, when that day happened, the line between heroes and villains, good and bad, it went away because the Hulk went crazy. Now, Steve said, listen, y'all know the Hulk was innocent. He was being controlled. But for James and the public, they can't believe what Steve is saying. And the media back then had painted the picture that heroes were lying, that Hulk was not really being controlled. And so James knows what to say to get under Steve's skin, to get on his nerves, just like his father, Tony. And so Steve gets so upset, he runs off and he realized he just let James win on live television. Now we kind of get the chance to see how bad H-Day truly was. We get a flashback while you have Steve Rogers thinking back to that moment. And when it comes to H-Day, Boston was just wrecked. But when the Avengers arrived, all they saw was just death, including Spider-Man's death. They got there and they found him. And you have Spider-Man begging Steve Rogers and the Avengers to make sure Aunt May, Mary Jane, they're okay. Like, he made sure to tell Steve, you better take care of my family. We also kind of find out that on H-Day, all the secret identities of all the different superheroes came out. And so their loved ones were being attacked left and right. It was literally a horrible day for the Avengers, or really the superhero community. But for Steve Rogers, that was the day the Avengers fell apart. Except when he comes back to, well, he's confronted by a bunch of guards who tell him, hey man, Curfew is about to go in effect. You need to go ahead and go home. Now, for Steve, it's like, dang, okay, yeah, you're right. I gotta follow the law. I gotta go ahead and head on home. Except while he's trying to leave, he sees a bunch of kids who are recording. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to this future, you're not allowed to record. You're not allowed to record anything at all because there is a possibility you might capture something that might go against the media. And so when it comes to these young boys, they begin to get harassed by these officers. Now, Steve, he tries to step in. He tries to use the moves that he remembers. But let's not forget, this is a Steve Rogers who has lost the super soldier serum. And so unfortunately, he is unable to do anything at all to the security guards or these police officers. And they begin to beat down on him over and over and over again, except that is the moment he is saved by a group of men who are kind of hiding in the shadows. And they said, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and bring him in. But then we jump over to James. Now, when we do, it is James arriving to the raft. Now, remember, the raft used to be a prison to hold a range of different kinds of super villains. But that was the old days. Now the raft is being used as a way to hold different kinds of experiments, or possibly still being a prison but holding some other dark secrets as well. Either way, when James does arrive, you do have the scientists there kind of upset with James not calling ahead to tell them that he was arriving. But he says, listen, the president has been bugging me to work on the Iron Man suits that we are currently using against Latveria. And so I had to come here to get some ideas on what to add to the Iron Man suits. Now, here's the thing, and we're left to wonder this. Is James as smart as his father? I say maybe not. And the reason why, because when James walks into a particular room, he is going to talk to what seems to be his father's mind that's just been trapped inside some kind of device, where James is able to use the helmet of an Iron Man suit to connect his mind to what's left of his father's mind, to kind of use his father's mind to get a better idea of what to add into the Iron Man suits to help win the battle against Latveria. We then jump back over to Steve Rogers. Now, when we do, it's Steve Rogers and us finding out who kidnapped him. It was a group of people better known as the Defenders, who are working for Luke Cage. So even in the far future, Luke Cage is still all about the people. Now, when it comes to Luke, he's saying, hey, Steve, the reason why I brought you here is to tell you Matt Murdock is dead. And we only saw him at the very beginning of this book. But as Luke saying, Matt died trying to do the right thing. He realized these new laws were taking away people's free will, and that is not okay at all. And so Matt tried to gather intel for us so that we are able to wake up the people of America, to open up their eyes to see what America is truly like. Because what Luke is saying right now, the media is being controlled, but the media is controlling the people. And the problem is the Avengers. The Avengers are now being used by the American military to attack other countries around the world. But the people of America, they don't know that, because the media is only telling stories of the Avengers doing something over there that's kind of like, oh, look, they're helping out so many people, but not really saying, oh, look, it's the Avengers attacking innocent countries around the world. And so as Luke's saying, we have to get the truth out there. And the truth is not just the Avengers, but all the corruption going on in the American government. And so it's Luke telling Steve, you used to be Captain America. You used to be the symbol of truth. It's time for you to be that again. It's time for you to get out there and be the symbol of truth. Now for Steve, he's kind of like, dude, I would love that, but I lost the super soldier serum until a young lady tells Steve, nah, man, I was able to recreate the super soldier serum to help you achieve our goal. And so, man, it's time for you to go ahead and get inside and become Captain America again. And so that's the end of the first chapter. We're not done yet. And so when we jump into the second chapter, we pick up with Steve Rogers being Captain America. He does go out of his way to help out some people who were being harassed by some police officers. Now, once he's able to do that, word gets out very quickly about him being Captain America again. You have folks saying, hey guys, did you hear? The original Captain America is back. But you still have some people out there who do not believe that he is back because the media is not talking about him. And that kind of shows that with the media being in charge over the people, they rely on the media to tell the stories about what's happening in America. And so if the media is only focusing on one certain thing, unfortunately, other things get left behind, like the idea of Steve Rogers being back. But either way, word is getting out there, but at a very slow rate. And matter of fact, with the idea of word getting out there at a very slow rate, you have Steve Rogers meet up with Luke Cage and his defenders, and they are making a plan to make sure word does get out. The idea that the American government and the media is lying to the public. There's going to be a huge parade very soon, and their goal is to take over that broadcast, and then have Steve Rogers give out a powerful speech to hopefully begin the process of people opening their eyes to realize that they have been getting lied to for a very long time. And so you have Steve Rogers agree that this is going to be a good plan. He loves the idea of being the symbol of truth. Now, right after he agrees, you do have someone tell Steve, we brought your wife here, Rosa. Now, Rosa is very ticked off because with him being Captain America again, that also affects her and her life. And so unfortunately, her life is over. Everything she built for herself, her entire career, is out the window. But she also agrees that what Steve Rogers is doing, but again, he didn't even ask her if she wanted to be involved. She got forced into this. And so she says, we are over. But while I'm here, I will try my best to be helpful. But I want you to realize that thanks to you, our marriage is over. And so we jump over to the White House where we pick up with the president. Now, when we do, the president is having a meeting with James and Kyle. Now, you have all three men agree that Steve Rogers is a problem. And so because of that, they want to get rid of him. But the question is how? Now, when it comes to James, he wants to use the Thunderbolts. Now, we can tell that apparently the Thunderbolts are a team of characters that usually go on special missions that are given to them by the American government, the American military. And most of the time, those missions must take place in other countries away from America. Because as soon as James says, let's use the Thunderbolts, you have the president say, really? On American soil? That is crazy. I don't want to do that. And that is the moment we kind of find out that it was thanks to James and also Kyle that this president was able to win the last election. And so they tell him, you're not in charge. We are in charge. If we say you are going to use the Thunderbolts, that means you are going to use the Thunderbolts. Now we do get a quick look to find out who is the Thunderbolts or who is on this team. Well, really, we only learn about one particular member, and that would be Bullseye. Now, this is not the original Bullseye. This is a brand new Bullseye who is a lady who's apparently great with snipers, and so she is able to hit most of her targets, really all of her targets. And so they want to use her and her teammates to go after Steve Rogers, but she is the only Thunderbolt we get the chance to learn about. Now we do pick up with Steve Rogers, and when we do, we kind of find out that Steve Rogers is trying to launch the Dark Avengers protocol. Now, we are not told what is this protocol. We have no idea what the actual game plan for it, but you have Steve Rogers being able to find Kamala Khan. Now, when it comes to Steve, he says that she was one of the best Avengers ever in the entire time the team was around. And so he's trying to bring her back in. But the problem is she gave up the hero life to have the ability to raise her children. And so you have Steve say, listen, I understand why you did what you had to do, but we need you. We need to tell America the actual truth of what happened on H-Day, the actual truth what's happening right now across the world. And I need you by my side because you are one of the best Avengers I ever worked with. Now, Kamala Khan says no, but as Steve Rogers leaves, well, you can tell that she might go try to help Steve to go save America, to possibly give her children a better future. And so we jump over to Steve Rogers and the Defenders getting ready to try to pull off their big mission. The idea of taking over every single channel that is currently broadcasting the big parade that's happening for New Year's Eve in New York. And so once you have our heroes being able to get everything set up, well, unfortunately, they are confronted by the Thunderbolts. Now, when it comes to the Thunderbolts, well, let's not forget, we only know about Bullseye and that is it. The rest of the team, we have no idea who they are or what kind of powers they may have. And honestly, it seems like the book is telling us everyone else doesn't matter. Only Bullseye does. And so you do have the Thunderbolts begin the process of trying to attack our heroes. Now, you do have our heroes being able to defend themselves long enough to get Steve Rogers set up. And he tries to give out a powerful speech that's being played on all the different channels that was broadcasting the parade. Now, it's him saying, you guys, the people of America, you need to open up your eyes and realize the media has been controlling you. The media has been lying to you about what's really happening across our country, or really across the world. Now, unfortunately, he is not able to finish his speech because of the Thunderbolts, but at least he was able to get most of it out to begin the process of the people opening up their eyes. Either way, you do have Steve Rogers and his team get the heck out of there. But while they're trying to leave, Bullseye actually has a shot where if she takes it, she could kill Captain America. But she doesn't. And the question is why? Why didn't she take that shot to basically accomplish her mission? But now we have to jump back over to James, who is currently working inside his armory. Now, while working inside there, he does get a call from Kyle. Now, he does tell Kyle, hey man, great news. I was able to figure out what kind of upgrades I need to add into the new Iron Man armor suits. And this will be great for the army. Now, Kyle does congrats James on being able to do it, but he tells James, I don't want these new Iron Man suits to be used for the army. Instead, I want you to use them as a way to bring down Steve Rogers. I want you to wear the next Iron Man armor. Now remember, James was never down with the idea of wearing his father's creations at all. The whole Iron Man idea is something he hates so much. But it's Kyle saying, that is why you should do it. Because if you wear what your father had created, it's going to tick off Steve Rogers so much that he'll come to you and try to bring you down. And once he tries to come after you, that is when we'll be able to finally remove him. And so we get the idea of James possibly putting on a brand new kind of Iron Man armor. But at the end of the phone conversation, we pick up with Kyle. Now, when we do, we kind of find out that Kyle is not really Kyle. And what I mean by that is He's the Red Skull. And so now we're left to wonder, how in the world is the Red Skull still alive in this timeline? But we also kind of find out the Red Skull is working alongside with Ultron. Now here's the thing. Ultron is currently locked away in some kind of prison, and the only way to get out is if the Red Skull lets him out. But the Red Skull says, no, I am only going to let you out until the world is properly ready for you to take over. But at the same time, I know that I won't be here for it. I want to make sure I'm going to die before I let you take over the world. And so now we know that these two characters are working together. But then we have to jump over to Captain America, Luke Cage, and also the Defenders. Now, when we do, you have everyone realize that after Steve Rogers' big, powerful speech about the idea of the media lying to the people of America, well, no one's on his side. The people of America are not even talking about him. On top of that, the news channels are not even talking about him either. And so for him, it seems like that last mission was a complete failure. Now, when it comes to Luke Cage, he has to tell Steve, nah, man, you have to realize that the people of America have been brainwashed for so long, it's not going to be that easy to make everyone realize that they have been lied to. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some work. And so we have to just keep on trying. Now, that is the moment where you do have one of the members of the Defenders come over to Steve and also Luke and say, hey, we just figure out what is their big, powerful secret weapon. It's the brain of Tony Stark. And we already saw it earlier in this video, which means now Steve, Luke, and their team are going to try their best to go steal the brain of Tony Stark. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.